What's up, everybody? Happy Monday to you. The NFL draft is finally complete. And we move on now to the offseason with a whole lot of questions remaining. And so I thought, there's a lot of different content out there about the draft class and everything. And I just decided I want to dive into some of the facts surrounding the Green Bay Packers draft class, some of them on the field, some of them off. But as I've been researching all these different guys, these are 20 facts that I came across that I thought were either incredibly interesting or pertinent. Now, you may notice that this is actually a live video. That wasn't exactly the plan for today. Got a really late start on getting it done and everything. So I wanted to get it out. So here we are live. If you happen to be here in person, thanks. I probably just want to acknowledge a lot of the comments so we can get to the topic of the day. So I do hope everyone out there is having a wonderful Monday. Before we dive into the topic, I got two super quick announcements. One, we have a Patreon now, so please go check it out. I'll just be refreshing every so often about it, but it is a Patreon. It's a way to help support Claudia and I as we continue to grow and expand the channel. There's some merch giveaways that we're going to do. You get a discount code to the merch shop once we get that launched. Plus, I'm going to be giving away actual Packer memorabilia, like signed stuff every month once we get enough people. So go check it out. I got the link in the description to this video. Next, some actual Packer news. Matt LaFleur in his press conference dropped a couple injury updates out there that we weren't necessarily expecting. In regards to Christian Watson, he said the hamstring looks great. Thus far, he's full go. Same with Eric Stokes. Everything looks good on that front as well. But then the big surprise from Matt LaFleur happened to be an update on Kingsley Enagbare. And the fact is, from what LaFleur said, apparently it was never confirmed that he fully tore his ACL, that he never wound up getting surgery, and that he may actually not miss a big chunk of this season, which is very surprising considering that at the end of the year, Enagbare seemed to confirm to reporters at his locker that he did indeed tear the ACL. So no one's quite positive what's going on here, but of course, take LaFleur's word as the authority on this, and maybe something develop after Enagbare talked to reporters. We don't know, but from the sounds of it, that would be great news for the Packers' purposes of depth. So, one last thing to clarify too. I said I would clarify this, so I just want to make sure that I do that before we dive into the topic. I talked in the watch party about there potentially being a loophole about draft picks not counting on the roster until they sign contracts. And it seems really fuzzy. Different people are interpreting the rules different ways. Moving forward, I'm just going to operate with the assumption that rookies do count on the 90-man roster. And so the UDFA limit is capped. Regardless, we're going to move forward like that as maybe some technicalities get ground out. All right. So let's hit these facts. Again, 20 facts that I thought were incredibly interesting in researching the 2024 Packers draft class. Number one, we're going to start off with the guy who was indeed the first-round pick, Jordan Morgan. Per PFF, Jordan Morgan finished as one of the top collegiate offensive linemen last year, regardless of draft class or position. Morgan finished 16th amongst all offensive linemen in pass blocking and 48th amongst all O-linemen in run blocking, which, keep in mind, just how many O-linemen there are in college football. It's hundreds. So even though 48 doesn't sound great, it's still pretty dang good. If you want to change the criteria to just being more tackles, then he was top 15 in both pass blocking and run blocking. If you want to make it just draft eligible tackles, he was top 8 in both categories. The only other individual in this draft who can make that claim was Joe Alt, who went 5th overall. Fact number 2, we're going to go with that guy, Keaton Aladapo. He finished last year with a career year in run support. His 91.3 grade in run support from PFF was the 3rd best amongst all safeties last year. Like everyone, period, every school, every snap count, doesn't matter, 3rd best. And he was 1st amongst all safeties who attended a Power 5 school. Fact 3, moving on to that guy, jersey number 0. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about his jersey number. We might get into that just a little bit later. But the 3rd round selection of the Packers does have this really weird thing around the number 3. He got a 177 elusiveness score by PFF, basically just a score that they use to say how elusive a guy is. I know that's really shocking, but it does work on this really large scale. He got a 177, which is very, very good. It's the third highest amongst all running backs with as many carries as he had. His breakaway percentage, which is the number of runs that you get that go over certain yardage thresholds for designed runs, was 56.7%, third highest. His yards per carry, 7.1. Yeah, you guessed it, third highest. His run blocking score for running backs, third highest. He also had 3 fumbles, which unfortunately, of players with 3 or more fumbles, Lloyd did have the fewest carries. Now, I should make note, LaFleur and Gutekunst don't seem to be overly concerned about the fumbles. When they were asked about it, they said that it's something that they believe that they can coach up. But nonetheless, look at all that. Like, he finished third in all of these categories, wound up with 3 fumbles, some about the guy in the third round. But yeah, fumbles is going to be something that he has to improve. It's probably a good thing that jersey number 3 is retired in Green Bay, or else we're just going to get weird. Moving on to fact number 4, it deals with their 7th round quarterback, Michael Pratt. There's 3 categories of throwing, right? If you exclude throws behind the line of scrimmage, then you've got short, medium, deep. And over his last 3 years starting, throws over 20 yards in depth, otherwise known as deep throws, received his highest PFF grade 2 out of the 3 seasons. The one season that it didn't, which was arguably his best season overall, actually, 2022, that category was still his second best category. And this is also an area of the field where he threw the fewest interceptions, with only 3 deep picks over 3 years. Deep throws were also his highest QB rating year in and year out, every single year. 2021, 118.6, 2022, 129.7, and last year, 115.8. However, on the more negative side of things, it should be noted that Pratt does need time. The 2 categories of throws that feature his highest turnover-worthy play percentage every year were on no screen passes and non-play action plays. Plus, his pressure to sack rate was over 20% every year in college. His shortest time to throw collegiately was 2.69 seconds in 2021. That put him 34th out of 60 eligible passers in college football. His slowest year, so that's his best year, was 34th out of 60. His slowest and average time to throw, 2.86 seconds, which ranked him 67th out of 95 eligible passers. Fact number 5. The Packers got themselves some pretty decent tacklers in this draft. I talk a lot about missed tackle percentage and how much it means for the defense. Well, last year, Evan Williams had a missed tackle percentage of 13.8, Keaton Oladapo 12.1, Javon Bullard 10.8. If they carried over those percentages, that would rank them on the current Packer roster, or the roster of last year, I should say, 2nd, 3rd, and 5th amongst all 7 safeties if you combine the last 2 years. For reference, last year, the Packers safeties with the highest amount of snaps were Darnell Savage and Jonathan Owens. Those 2 combined for 24 missed tackles per PFF's tracking. Bullard and McKinney, if you take their numbers together, they combined for 14 last season. Nonetheless, if you watch the watch party, you know that I support still bringing back Rudy Ford to round out the room. I still support bringing back Rudy Ford to round out the room. He would have been the best one. Number 6, in regards to guys that like to run and hit, it's the exact phrase that Gutekunst used in a bunch of different press conferences, talking about wanting to get players that are capable of running and hitting. Well, they certainly have the running thing now covered at linebacker. The Packers average 40 time for their top 4 off-ball linebackers. So we're looking at Quay, McDuffie, Hopper, and now Cooper. Their average 40 time would be 4.55. If you factor in the 4.58 that the Packers supposedly timed Hopper at his top 30 visit. On the Raz, it's higher, but they supposedly got a better score out of him at the top 30. They acknowledged that in the press conference. Dating back to 1987, which is as far back as Raz tracking goes, that means that the Packers beat the average for all linebackers by 0.08. The average linebacker from 1987 to current ran it in 4.63. The Packers average now 4.55. Moving on to fact 7, the Packers have a type. And they certainly have priorities that go beyond just athletic thresholds, body sizes, etc. And one of them we know is versatility. The Packers' offensive line has an interesting conflict amongst its three picks. Jacob Monk was a 5-year starter who amassed 58 starts over his time. Those 3 starts were spread across 3 different positions: center, right guard, and right tackle. Travis Glover, a 5-year starter who amassed 57 starts over his time. His starts spread across 3 different positions: left tackle, left guard, and right tackle. Very, very similar just stats there between Monk and Glover. However, then there's first round pick Jordan Morgan. So he's a little bit different. By a lot of analysts and pundits, he's considered perhaps the most versatile offensive lineman that the Packers drafted. But he stands out for a couple reasons. One, he only started 37 games over his 5 years, and every single one of them came at left tackle. And it even goes deeper than starting. The only spot on the field that he's taken snaps and the offensive line, tackle. He does have a couple snaps at inline tight end for special packages. He did it a whopping 6 snaps over 5 years. The man is a left tackle, at least it was in college, through and through. I'm not saying that projecting him inside is wrong, but it is very interesting that perhaps the player who's renowned in this draft class for being the most flexible is the least experienced at actually being flexible, considering he may wind up starting at right guard. Even if he starts out at left tackle, he may start at right guard. Dude's never played guard in a game at the collegiate level before. Another super interesting fact from this draft class actually has to do with leadership, another intangible the Packers actively look for. Fact number 8 is of the Packers' 11 draft picks, 7 of them have previously been team captains at least for 1 year during their college careers. Between those captains, the Packers collectively have added 13 years of captain experience on their roster, the most being a tie between Michael Pratt, the 7th-round quarterback, who did it for 3 years at Tulane, and 4th-round safety Evan Williams, who was a 3-year captain at Fresno State before transferring to Oregon. Moving on to fact 9, one thing that Brian Gutekunst seems to do, especially with day 3 picks, is he really likes to find value by finding guys that had a better year collegiately 2 years ago than they did in their draft eligible year. And that just seems to be how he can extract such value. Dontavian Wicks comes to mind as like the perfect example of that premise. And now, taking a look at their 7th round, both selections fit the bill. In 2022, Kayden King was awarded an 89 by PFF, just an overall grade. Same for Michael Pratt. Again, 89, but on the other side of the ball, obviously. This year, Pratt fell from 89 to 78. King, 89, all the way down to 60. We'll be talking about King in just a little bit again. Another Brian Gutekunst norm, picking players on the young side. However, this year, he was willing to bend at times. For a breakdown of ages, there are 2 21-year-olds that have been added to the team, both in the secondary. One right there, Kayden King, but then also their 2nd-round selection, Javon Bullard. They also added 5 22-year-olds and 4 23-year-olds. As for 1st-round pick Jordan Morgan, he's 22, nearly 23 years old. Of Brian Gutekunst's 9 first-round picks, 6 of the 9 have been 21 years old. 2 of them, including Morgan, 22. Devontae Wyatt, the strong outlier here, at 24. Another bend but don't break out of the thresholds this year for one Brian Gutekunst happened to be again with Marshawn Lloyd, and it's got nothing to do with the number 3 this time. But coming in at 5'8 3/4, and don't you dare say 5'7 3/4, because Brian Gutekunst will correct you, as he did in the press conference. But coming in at 5'8 3/4, Marshawn Lloyd is the shortest running back drafted by the Packers since height data started being recorded in RAS. And RAS goes back all the way to 1987. I will admit, the earlier back you go, it is missing key points along the way, especially height for some. But nonetheless, This is still going back a long ways that Lloyd is the shortest running back the Packers have chosen. But at 220 pounds, he is nearly identical to the Packers' exact average of weight over the exact same time span. That number coming in at 219.86. Thick with three C's is how he was described in the watch party by someone in the comments. And yeah, it seems to be accurate. Fact number 12, Jacob Monk. Jacob Monk hopes to find himself exclusively in hot water. And I say this because he has a cold water allergy. This felt just too big just to not acknowledge it in this list. Bill Huber wrote an entire article on it for SI. It details that Monk first discovered this cold water allergy while getting into a cold tub during his freshman year at Duke. Upon getting out, he was covered in hives and eventually passed out on the locker room floor. And he says that it's not about drinking the water. It's not really about just getting exposed. It's submerging in cold water, and his body freaks out. He did say, though, that playing in snow is no concern. He just shouldn't stay in the cold water all that long. For fact number 13, we're going back on the field, and that is fourth round pick Evan Williams. Evan Williams, if you watch the watch party at all, first of all, thank you. But second, you'd know that this was the pick out of all of them. And I am not the reactionary type. I'm not the type to get overwhelmed by it. This is the one more than any other that probably made me scratch my head. And I was wondering, what can he do? I acknowledge you'd be talking about it this week for sure. And there's something real clear that he can do. The man can get after the quarterback. Last year at Oregon, he was sent to rush the passer on only 20 snaps, but he turned those 20 snaps into mega production. Out of the 20, he got 8 pressures, 5 sacks, 1 hit, and 2 hurries. That gave him the second highest PRP out of all safeties last year. And if you don't know what PRP is, it's basically just a PFF metric for how productive you are combining pressures, sacks, etc. It's how they try to grade pass rushers on an even curve. So he had the second highest PRP out of all safeties last year and was the top converter of pressures into sacks. Using PFF's tracking, those 5 sacks he mustered last year were tied for the second most out of all safeties. What sets him apart, though, was Williams did 5 sacks in 20 snaps. The guy who tied with him and also got 5 snacks did it in 30 sacks, not snacks. Oh man, 5 sacks in 30 snaps. The one guy, though, in college football that beat them both, he got 9 sacks, but he needed to do it in nearly 5 times as many snaps as he did in 97 snaps, completely dwarfing Williams' 20. It is not at all a stretch to say that in all of college football last year, Evan Williams was one of the best, if not the best, blitzing and pass rushing safety. Fact number 14, as we continue on through the loose list. Speaking of questions, I had a bunch about Evan Williams, but there's also some things about Kayden King. Like, why did this guy drop so far in the draft? There was some talk last year about how if he did another year like he did 2022, Kayden King may be the top corner in this draft. And then here he is, pick 255 for the Green Bay Packers. He got some preseason accolades coming into the year last year, including he was a first-team preseason All-American from the Associated Press, Sporting News, and PFF. He was named to the Bednarik Award, the Bronco Nagurski, the Jim Thorpe Award, the Lot Impact Trophy watch lists. And yet, his play just didn't seem to come up to the place that it did the year before. One stat that was highly enlightening was that in 2022, he had 21 passes defended, good for 3rd in the FBS. This year, 2. And that's, there could be any number of reasons for that. One, he lost his running partner in Joey Porter Jr. It could just be lower production, whatever. But facts are facts. He went from 21 to 2. That 2 happens to be the number that he wore when growing up, because he's from Michigan and he idolized Charles Woodson as a child. Fact number 15. Well, I covered earlier a number of players that had better previous seasons than the most current one. The same can't be said for the first two defensive players that the Packers drafted. In 2022, Adrian Cooper had defensive grades of the following: 66.1, 66.7, 64.4, 70.4, and 59.7. Those being all of the different PFF grades, such as overall defense, run defense, pass rushing, etc. All the mid 60s, topping out at 70, dropping out at 59.7. 2023, the numbers just slightly better: 90.8, 87.6, 73.7, 86.4, and 85.5. Higher in every single category. For the other second round pick, Javon Bullard, who went at pick 58, he experienced raises in overall defense, tackling, and coverage. The only category that he sank in was his run defense, which only fell by 6 points. Just to throw in another little fact that kind of wasn't its own fact about Bullard, he allowed only a QB rating of 34 this last season, while allowing 0 touchdowns in coverage. Get excited. Taking a look back at the offensive line for fact number 16. I wanted to combine some stats. I wanted to see just how good all three guys are at pass blocking. So speaking of giving stuff up, in the last 2 years, Jordan Morgan blocked for over 900 passing plays. On all of those plays, he gave up a grand total of 3 sacks and 30 pressures. Travis Glover, well, he played over 700 passing plays, giving up 5 sacks and 24 pressures. Jacob Monk, again over 700, but only gave up 1 sack and 33 pressures. Combined, the 3 linemen drafted by Green Bay played over 2,300 passing play snaps the last 2 years in college and gave up a combined 9 sacks and 87 pressures. A pressure given up on under 4% of all combined snaps. Number 17, I did want to throw in just a couple more fun ones. Number 17, people like to say that second round pick Adrian Cooper, he's got that dog in him. But they probably not say that not knowing what one of his biggest hobbies is off the field. As a hobby, Cooper helps to breed cane corsos and French bulldogs. We might need to find some new phrasing here. Moving on to fact number 8. 3 players drafted by the Green Bay Packers actually underwent transfers during their college careers. That is a little higher than the norm. Marshawn Lloyd, he started out at South Carolina before transferring to USC. Evan Williams started out at Fresno State, then went to Oregon. Teron Hopper, the 3rd round linebacker, went from Florida before finishing at Missouri. Moving us to fact 19, dealing with travel. See, 3rd round running back Marshawn Lloyd, he's no stranger to it. He used to commute 4 hours round trip from his Delaware home to his high school in Maryland. He would wake up every day at 4:45 a.m., hit the road, and arrive to campus a little after 7 each morning. The reason? His family believed that attending DeMatha Catholic High School 2 hours away would result in him becoming the best running back he possibly could. And I've seen a lot of talk about like wanting him to be number 0 in Green Bay, and I get it, that would be sweet. But they have assigned him, as of right now, jersey number 32. That 32 happens to be the same number that he wore his freshman year at DeMatha. And that takes us to our final fact, fact number 20. And before I say number 20, I do just want to thank everyone for being here. Sorry, I'm not acknowledging comments today, just trying to get the content out today. But I will say there's going to be no episode on Friday of this week. I've got some personal stuff coming up, but look for a midweek episode. I just don't know when I'm going to drop it, but there'll be a midweek episode detailing the UDFAs that the Packers have signed, including, yes, if you're out there watching, Joseph, Thomas, Steve, the guys who love to break me about long snappers. Yeah, I'm going to have to talk about a long snapper. It's coming this week. But fun fact number 20, and these are facts, so you cannot dispute them in any way, shape, or form. But fun fact number 20 about the Packers draft class: they're all going to win a Super Bowl in early 2025. Thanks, everybody, for joining me here at Lombardi Time Brews. Do hope you have a great Monday. I will see you on Wednesday for Lombardi Time Brews live at 4 o'clock. And look for that midweek episode dropping sometime about the UDFAs. Have a great night, everybody. And as always, go Pack Go.